It's the last place for Satan to corrupt. He already owns Christian radio and television, and this is the last battlefield.
Yep, we're going to go on break, folks. We're going to be back in about a minute and a half. We'll take your calls. 260-356-2611.
Do you know where the 78 potentially active volcanoes in the U.S. are located? And do you know the locations of the top 300 prime terrorist targets? You can find these answers and more in the new interactive CD book, Prudent Places USA. With the more than 50 interactive parameters, you can pinpoint natural and man-made disaster areas, brewing environmental catastrophes, the safest cities, the best places for solar and wind energy, and much, much more. Complete with 3 gigabytes of detailed information on each of 3,000 plus counties in the U.S., including 550 high-resolution full-color maps and full-color photographs, as well as detailed information and analysis to help you zero in on the best places to live, the ideal location for cabins and vacation homes, as well as safe and unsafe areas. Get Prudent Places USA for only $29 plus shipping by calling New Millennium at 888-803-4438. That's 888-803-4438 to order on the web or at murkywater.com.
And now back to the show. You're back up, Sherry.
Okay, folks, and we're back. We've got about a half hour left to go. If you want to call in and ask us a question, the phone number is 260-356-2611. And tonight we've just been talking about some of the things we could expect in 2005 and the recent disasters in Southeast Asia. Pastor Harry was telling us some of his adventures in internet chats. He treads where I refuse to go.
Well, the funny thing about Christian chat rooms and chat rooms in general is that people can be more honest.
Well, you know what? I had an experience with these a couple of years ago. In fact, it's where I started. When I first got on the internet about 12 years ago, I headed right for the chat rooms, and you get all these Christian fellowship type rooms, and I found that more Satanists are in those rooms than believers. And, you know, I refused to deal with them after a while. The Lord led me out of them. I would create my own rooms, my own member chat room, and the Lord would bring people in there that really wanted to hear of Him. And I had much more success that way reaching people than I ever did trying to go through all those wolves that say they're Christians in those Christian chat rooms.
Well, they will. I tell you, the Christian chat room for me has been a training ground.
It is.
But if you can survive a year or two in Christian chat, you're ready to start a ministry outside of that little chat box, because a lot of those people, I don't know what's with them, but...
You know, one time me and my friend went over into the Satanist room, and they said, "What are you doing in here?" And I said, "Because you're all in our rooms."
Well, that's
there was like 2 people in that room, so we stayed there and chatted for the night, and had a nice time, because, there's so many people, so many Wiccans, the pagans, who will pose as Christians in the chat rooms just to keep arguments going.
Well, that's true, and there's also a lot of people that love that lie of once saved, always saved, and the moment they'll be talking about regular, things in the world, just normal things, and how short Britney Spears' skirt is, but the moment you say once saved, always saved isn't true, they will turn on you with the full wrath of God.
And it's out of the dogma. It's not because they've got a head full of religion and not a heart full.
That's true, and really the doctrine of once saved, always saved, it just gives people a license to sin, because when you really believe that, anything goes. You are already in heaven.
Yeah, it's from the pit of hell itself, because it gives people, the mentality to go back and do things the way they want to do. When Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice, and they know me, and they follow me," which means you're actively seeking Him and not going off in sin.
That's very true.
Yeah, you can't be of yourself, going off and doing things on your own without Him, and expect to still be in Him.
But they say you are, and you may lose. They say you may lose your reward in heaven. Meaning, if you live a really sinful life, God may pluck a few jewels out of your crown, but you're there. And if you're believing once saved, always saved, like Sherry just said, you're not hearing God's voice. You're hearing the voice of Satan, and he's already leading you in a circle. And once you believe that, I've noticed people become complacent. They become tolerant of sin. And little by little, they just become totally involved in sin. You develop a totally sinful lifestyle, and you justify it by, I'm once saved, always saved. I'm unpluckable. No, nothing can pluck me from God's hand. And it's just sad when they believe that, because they're in for the shock of their life one day. And you try to reason with these people, but when somebody really loves a lie, there's not much you can do but just pray for them and move on.
You know how you can usually tell when you're in trouble is if you are with the majority. Because the majority throughout Israel's history have always been in error, and the Lord says that, the road to heaven is narrow.
That's right.
It's the unpopular road. It's the one nobody likes. It's the one everybody, argues with, and you know what? It's not popular. And so, if you're in this majority and you're among millions of other people who are agreeing the same things you are, you're in trouble.
That's true. Following the herd. It's always a bad response.
Yeah, what I wanted to do is we've been talking about this disaster in Southeast Asia, and some of the motivations behind it, if it was man-made, because what I want to do is I'm going to read a couple of quotes about how we do have the capability of causing this kind of disaster. Some of you out there just don't even fathom the idea that this could have been man-made when it could have been.
No, they're too busy blaming God.
Yeah, and so let's read the quotes here. This is from Secretary of Defense William Cohen speaking at an April 1997 terrorism conference at the University of Georgia. And here he reveals the existence of earthquake weapons. He says, weather modification offers the war fighter a wide range of possible options to defeat or coerce an adversary. In the United States, weather modification will likely become a part of national security policy with both domestic and international applications. Our government will pursue such a policy depending on its interests at various levels. And I love this one from, this is Senator Claiborne Pell, as chairman of the Senate subcommittee hearing in 1975 on artificially induced earthquakes. And this was in 1975, folks. And he says, we need a treaty now before the military leaders of the world start directing storms, manipulating climates, and inducing earthquakes against their enemies. They had this capability back in 1975, and they were calling for a treaty then, this own senator, to try to control our government with it.
Sherry, that's interesting. Did you ever see that movie Under Siege 2 with Steven Seagal?
No.
Well,
Never been a big fan of his.
Well, that was well, no, I won't comment on that, but there was an interesting movie. It was about a satellite used by the government that could actually, it would project a powerful sound beam that could cause earthquakes.
Yeah.
And I saw that in a few other movies too, and it's been presented as science fiction. But you're saying that's now a modern day weapon.
Oh yeah, Tom Bearden, who was a PhD, a nuclear engineer, stated that all destruction can be caused from a local control room towards any point on Earth.
What would they be using?
Well, they have the Tesla weapons. Of course, Tesla. The story of Tesla was this genius who created all these zero-point energy and just all these magnificent, free energy type devices. And what they did was they pretty much did to him like they do anybody with brains, take their patents and throw them in jail. And we have the capability to make any disaster anywhere on the earth happen. We can cause earthquakes. We can cause hurricanes. You saw the hurricane in Florida stop in midair and change directions. All the stuff that we can do. We can actually create any disaster anywhere in the world and make it happen. And not just us, folks. The Russians have been doing it forever. They were doing it before we were.
Is that weapon they hear about called HAARP, H-A-A-R-P?
Yep, the HAARP that uses, Tesla patents to make it run. We've seen with chemtrails how they're manipulating the weather patterns to cause storms or to make certain areas a drought. They've been doing this forever. For 20, 30 years now they have it perfected to where they can sit in a control room, hint, hint, Cheyenne Mountain, and make a disaster happen anywhere in the world they want to. And if we can do it, and the Russians had this technology 10 years before we had it, then, you know what, it's just going to be a weather war from one side of this world to the other. The